Welcome back. Now, if you've been on the internet, specifically on Facebook over the last, 5-6 years, basically, actually, no, more than that, right? Since pretty much since the 2016 election.
Roughly.
You have likely been banned, shadow banned, or one of your friends has been banned or shadow banned. It's almost impossible for that to have not happened, one way or the other. But it looks like it's coming to an end, and potentially apologies are coming down the pipe. Josh, what's the deal?
So Mark Zuckerberg released this video on the new policies for Meta. So this is going to be Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and
Threads,
it's still a thing, yeah. And they're trying to basically revive these platforms under a free speech standard, actually following what Elon Musk is doing. So let me show you this. So one of the things he brought up was the problems of the fact checkers, that they brought on these different organizations to fact check. And he's now acknowledging the fact checkers often got information wrong. Let me show you this.
First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
Wow. Before you dissect what he said, you know what's funny? I remember when Elon Musk took over Twitter, he fired a bunch of people. The media were like up in arms about it, saying it would never work, blah, blah, blah. But almost like the next week, all these other companies also fired a bunch of people in his footsteps, probably because their shareholders were seeing what he was doing, right? And then he launched community notes, and people were, the media class was again up in arms, like, oh, this is like, it's not as good as fact checking. It can now we're being fact checked. That's not good. You fast forward a year, and now he's doing the same thing, community notes. Wow.
Well, it's interesting, actually. The community notes movement started before Musk took over Twitter. That was actually going to be a Twitter policy. But the way Musk did it was made it more in the hands of the populace, right? This whole popular kind of movement, right? But what Zuckerberg came out and said basically was that they tried allowing this centralized system to decide what is true and what's false. And the problem that's coming about from that is they find a lot of these organizations that run these fact-checking networks, they have problems. They are politically biased. They've unfairly targeted people who they don't agree with. And they get their facts wrong too. And so who's to determine what's right and what's wrong? He's saying he's basically not even going to remove content now unless it's illegal. And that's going to bring up some issues globally. But let me show you a couple more clips. He also brought up the issue of content moderation. And he's bringing up the issue that, kind of what a lot of people experienced, right? Is that they might try to protect one group by eliminating criticism of that group or criticism of that political topic. But if you want to do that, you need to ironically discriminate against the other people and their viewpoints. And he's saying they're not going to do that anymore. Let me show you this.
We're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far.
All right, Josh, let me ask you. Rewind the clock 2 months. Kamala Harris wins the election. Is this happening?
I don't think so.
Not basically the criticism.
Not a chance.
The being out of touch, right?
With the mainstream of the country. That's almost an exact effect of the election in my opinion.
But actually, in his defense, Zuckerberg actually, for the 2024 election, did begin backing off even prior to the victory, which was a big shift from 2020, when, of course, he was very much in line with things. He was, there was the Zuck Bucks controversy, they called it. He said he wasn't going to do it this time, and he actually backed off. But a lot of Silicon Valley took the same position, actually.
Interesting. I'll mention something in passing. These notes here were given to me by my producer, who said in the last episode my questions weren't interesting enough. So she put the topics that she wanted me to ask about. She generated the questions that she thought would be most interesting. Okay, I'll read this one. Will fact-checking elimination lead to big problems of democracy, Josh.
So here's the thing. It's going to be the opposite. It's going to be the opposite, and this is where it gets really fantastic. Not only will fact-checking not remove democracy, fact-checking and the removal of it, I should say, this is going to be a global policy. Democracy has become this kind of totalitarian line now. They say our democracy, our populist, whatever. But ironically, the people who say that, they don't support what the average person says.
Well,
they don't support the average beliefs of the individual.
Well, one aspect of that is, like you mentioned, the AfD party leader having an interview with Elon Musk. Now, the German government is trying to sanction Elon Musk for hosting the leader of the AfD party for that interview on X. But the AfD party is one of the highest polling parties in Germany.
Well, they need to defend democracy by preventing what people can see to cast their votes, of course.
Is that fair?
I don't think it's fair. Mm-hmm. And I also think, let me, I don't want to opine too much, Roman, but thank you.
Go ahead, I'm giving you the floor. Opine away.
TikTok, okay? The ban, Trump kind of backpedaled right before the election, and TikTok, a lot of people on the right and on the left saw it as a place where they can post their uncensored views. And now they see that place might not be going away. So could these platforms also be, becoming more like them?
So here's where it gets really interesting. This is, I think, the biggest point of this. For a long time, the United States has been kind of held by international standards. And one of the issues a lot of the big tech companies have been raising, which I believe is why Silicon Valley actually went so far in changing their political stances ahead of the 2024 elections, is that a lot of them are getting fined and investigated and pressured by foreign governments. Mm-hmm. You have the United Kingdom basically regulating free speech in the United States in some regards, even threatening to arrest Americans. When they had some of the anti-migrant protests in the UK recently, they were threatening to extradite and arrest Americans for things where people were saying on the internet. Mm-hmm. And what Mark Zuckerberg is actually saying now, and I think this is the biggest point, he said he's going to work with the Trump administration to make free speech a global policy, and he even says, even in China. Let me show you this.
We're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government.
The Monroe Doctrine is returning. We will not deal with countries that do not support freedom. This is the new global standard.
It's come a far way from jogging in the smog to impress Xi in China.
Or trying to name his kid after Xi, or trying to allow Xi to name his kid.
You know what I thought was interesting? One of the other issues is the bots, right? Like falsely identifying things as a problem. And that same bot just wrote your question. Maybe it's just trying to defend the world of AI.
They didn't do a good job.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. But honestly, it goes both ways. I'll say that. I'll take the other position, which is that those countries with stricter laws around speech should not be policing American companies and American speech. But you know what? Honestly, if they want to have those restrictions on their speech, like in Australia as an example, American companies shouldn't be allowing our platforms to facilitate their speech. Why don't they develop their own platforms where they can have their own censored speech, and our American companies can abide by the First Amendment right here in the good old US of A, as well as Greenland and Canada soon. Chris, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I have another question for Josh. So Josh, the emissary of Trump to Zuck is who? Dana White?
That is right. That is right. If
not a member of the cabinet or a member of anything, but a friend.
The cultural diplomat. Yes.
Yeah, cultural diplomat.
They went to some fights together.
And they're both in entertainment.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go. So what's going on with that? Why is that pick important?
A lot of people took this as a sign that Mark Zuckerberg is trying to get closer to Trump.
Yeah. And, well, he said it himself.
Yeah, and Dana White, of course, being the head of the MMA.
of the UFC, and that's
Sorry,
UFC,
UFC, MMA. I'm old school here.
well, it's like saying he's in charge of the baseball.
Fair
You
enough.
know, okay.
Fair enough.
And now he's on the board at
Yeah.
Meta, right? That's why we're bringing this up.
Yeah.
But also Mark Zuckerberg replaced some other key people with Republicans. He's also moving his content moderation teams from California to Texas.
Texas, yeah.
And
that
so
was-
this seems to be something across the board right now.
Interesting.
All right. Well, on that very much less somber note than whatever it was that Tiffany gave us with those grooming gangs, thank you so much for tuning in. All right. I know exactly what you're thinking. That was a great clip you just watched. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to follow and also check out either these videos or maybe they're on this side. I don't know which side they're on, but we set it up. So these are the videos that YouTube is suggesting to you as the best ones that you'll probably like the most. So check them out, this side, and until next time.